Welcome to Infidelity Diaries. Explore the secrets and stories of infidelity with us. I have always believed that change is for the better. When Sam and I moved into a new house in a suburban cottage community, I thought it was exactly what we needed. A fresh start, a new life. This area was known for its elite gyms, spas, and private schools. There was peace and quiet here, something I had been missing in the bustling metropolis. But little did I know that soon I would find myself in a situation where I would have to choose between what I knew and what I had possibly always wanted. Sam was consumed by his work. Every day, he left early in the morning and returned only when it was already getting dark. We rarely talked, and it started to feel like our lives were moving in different directions. And I, left alone in the new house, didn't know how to fill the sudden void. On one of those days, as I was once again trying to deal with our boxes and scattered belongings, a neighbor stopped by. Oliver looked friendly and was about 10 years older than us. He owned a local restaurant and, as it turned out, was a very active member of the local community. "Hi," he smiled, approaching our porch. "I'm Oliver. I live across the street. Just moved in?" "Yes," I replied, trying not to look too tired. "I'm Rachel. Nice to meet you." "Likewise," he said, glancing at our chaos. "Looks like you could use some help." I laughed. "You know, Oliver, I think I will take you up on that. Everything here is so new and unfamiliar." "Well, let's start with the basics," he winked. "Have you tried the local coffee yet?" I shook my head. "No, I haven't had the chance. Is it really that good?" "You have no idea. I have a small cafe in the center of the community. If you'd like, I can show you around and treat you to the best latte in town." "That sounds tempting," I smiled. "How about tomorrow?" And that's how it all began. The next day, we met at his cafe. "So, how do you like our little kingdom?" Oliver asked, pouring coffee. "We not only have a great view, but the people are wonderful too." "The people?" I smirked. "I think I'm just starting to get to know them." "Oh, you'll see. The locals are friendly and always welcome new faces," he said. "I'm sure you'll fit right in quickly." "I hope so," I replied, sipping from my cup. The coffee really was incredible. Time passed quickly, and soon we were spending more and more time together. Oliver showed me the best spots for relaxation and sports, introduced me to the owners of the fitness club where I signed up for yoga, and even helped me choose a good spa. "How do you like our yoga?" he asked one day after a session, as we stopped by the sports center. "It's great," I replied. "I haven't felt this relaxed in a long time." "I can see that." He winked. "Rachel, honestly, you have an amazing aura. It's like you're glowing." "Oh, don't flatter me, Oliver," I responded, feeling a little embarrassed. "No, seriously, Sam is lucky to have a wife like you." I smiled, but something inside me twisted. Sam. We had barely seen each other in recent weeks, and I was increasingly wondering if we were heading in the right direction. "Sometimes I think Sam and I have drifted too far apart," I admitted as we sat in Oliver's garden over a cup of tea. "He's always working, and I—" Oliver listened attentively, his eyes sparkling with interest. "That's normal," he said gently. "Every relationship has its difficult periods. The important thing is to understand what you truly want." "And you?" I asked, looking into his eyes. "What do you want?" "Happiness," he answered without hesitation. "But maybe happiness is closer than we think." His words seemed to penetrate deep into my consciousness. I didn't know what to think, but I felt that this place and this person were not here by accident. These conversations became more than just friendly chats. I began to look forward to my meetings with Oliver as something special. At some point, I realized that I needed his presence. I tried not to think too much about it, but every touch, every glance made my heart beat faster. From that evening, when we watched the stars in Oliver's garden, everything changed. It felt as though an invisible thread had formed between us, pulling us closer together. We started crossing paths more often, especially at the gym, which was only a few minutes' walk from our house. Oliver was a regular there, and I now went almost daily, not just for the workouts. Good morning, Rachel. I heard the familiar voice as soon as I entered the gym. Oliver smiled, approaching me with a towel in hand. He looked as though he had just finished his morning workout, but his eyes made it clear that he was happy to see me. Good morning, I replied with a smile. How was your workout? Great, as always. He winked. Are you ready for yours? Oh, absolutely, I nodded. I need to catch up with you. You seem to be a pro here. No, a pro? He chuckled. You know, I'm happy to take you under my wing. I can show you a few exercises that will help you see results faster. That would be great, I agreed. But fair warning, I'm not a fan of heavy lifting. Deal. We'll go at your pace, he smiled. Come on, let's start with a warm-up. We moved to the treadmills, and I felt a warmth spreading through my body. Not from the workout, but from the way Oliver looked at me, noticing every detail. His eyes lingered on my lips, my neck, and I couldn't help but notice it. So, tell me, Rachel, he began as we started jogging, what plans do you have for the near future? Honestly, not many, I replied, trying to keep my breath steady. Probably just continue settling in here. I see, Oliver nodded. But you didn't move here just to live out of habit, did you? I sighed, finding it harder and harder to hide my thoughts. Probably not, I admitted. I want something new, but I don't know what it is. Sometimes we just have to allow ourselves to experiment, to search, until we find what we really need, he said, looking at me seriously. You say that as if you've already found everything, I teased. Maybe, he smirked, but it took me a long time to figure out what makes me happy. Our conversations became deeper and more candid. We talked about many things: childhood dreams, missed opportunities, fears, and hopes. Oliver told me about his past, how he had started his restaurant from scratch, despite all the obstacles. I felt that he was open and honest with me, and that made me want to be around him even more. You know, Sam rarely shares his thoughts with me, I confessed one day when we were resting after a workout. Sometimes it feels like we live in different worlds. Why do you think that is? Oliver asked gently. I don't know. He's too busy with work, always traveling, and it feels like he doesn't have time for us. That's tough, Oliver responded. Being in a marriage where you feel alone? Yes, I whispered, feeling a lump in my throat. I don't even remember the last time we just sat together and talked. I understand, he said, touching my hand. You deserve to be heard and understood. His words were so sincere that they warmed my heart. He looked at me with such care and attention, more than anyone had in a long time. In that moment, I felt that he understood me better than anyone else, better than Sam. Thank you, Oliver, I said quietly, for being here. He just nodded, his gaze soft but penetrating. Day by day, we continued to meet. Sometimes it was a quick coffee break after a workout, sometimes long walks by the lake, which was just a few blocks from our neighborhood. With each passing day, I felt our attraction growing stronger. I could no longer deny that there was something special between us, something that made my heart beat faster. Have you ever thought about how things could have been different? Oliver asked one day as we sat by the lake. I looked at him, feeling everything inside me turn upside down. Maybe, I answered, avoiding his gaze. And you? Every day, he said, not looking away. I didn't know what to say. We sat in silence, staring at the water, and the silence was so loud that I could hear my own heartbeat. And at that moment, I realized that a person had entered my life who could change everything. Oliver and I started seeing each other more and more often, as if secretly reveling in that mysterious connection that had formed between us. I could no longer deny that the attraction was growing. I enjoyed being near him, his calm confidence, his easy smile, his ability to be present in the moment. It felt as though he could read my thoughts and sense my emotions. One day, Oliver suggested we go to a park outside the city. There was a small waterfall there, and he assured me it was one of the most scenic spots in the area. I agreed almost instantly, without thinking about why I was so eager to spend that day specifically with him. "You'll love it, I promise," Oliver said as we got into the car. "This place is unique, a true corner of peace." The park really was magical. The trees arched over the path, forming a green tunnel that was delightful to walk through. We strolled along the trail, with Oliver carrying a basket of food, and I relished the surrounding quiet. I could hear the sound of water ahead, its murmur growing louder. "There it is, our waterfall," Oliver said as we got closer. "Isn't it beautiful?" I held my breath. It truly was beautiful. Streams of water crashing against the rocks sparkled in the sunlight, and the air was filled with freshness and the scent of the forest. "It's amazing here," I whispered, unable to take my eyes off the falling water. "Why didn't you tell me about this place before?" "I wanted it to be a surprise," he replied with a smile. We settled down in a small clearing near the waterfall. Oliver spread out a blanket. We unpacked the food, and conversation flowed naturally. We talked about everything: childhood dreams, how quickly time flies, what we felt was missing from our lives. I spoke of my fears, my doubts, about how I missed spending time with Sam. He listened intently, his eyes sparkling with empathy and understanding. "You know, Rachel, sometimes I feel like you're still searching for something important in your life," he noted, "as if you're trying to find that part of yourself you lost long ago." I nodded, feeling that, once again, he had read my thoughts. "You're right," I replied, lowering my gaze. "I often feel lost." He leaned in closer, his hand gently touched mine. "You deserve to be happy," he said softly. "True happiness, the kind that lights up every day." My eyes met his. I felt something stirring inside from his words, from how close he was to me. Our faces were only inches apart. The water continued to fall behind us, its roar deafening, but I could hear nothing except my own quickening breath. And then, without thinking, I leaned in closer. He didn't pull away. Our lips met, at first gently, as if testing the boundaries, then more confidently. In that moment, it felt as though the world had ceased to exist. All that mattered was his warmth, his nearness. We pulled back, and I realized the world around us still existed, but something about it had changed. I glanced into his eyes. There was a question in them, one I couldn't yet answer. "Oliver," I whispered, unsure of what to say. "Rachel, he began, but then fell silent. We both understood that this kiss had changed everything. It was as if an invisible line had been crossed, and there was no turning back. After that day at the waterfall, everything changed. Oliver and I didn't talk about it, didn't discuss what that kiss meant, but we both knew. Something had shifted. Our glances, our touches, everything felt different. I often found myself thinking about him, imagining his voice, his smile, and eagerly anticipating each moment when I would see him again. Oliver suggested we meet at his restaurant after closing. It was his idea, but I agreed without hesitation, as if it were the most natural decision. Deep down, I knew it was the wrong choice, but I couldn't resist the pull that drew me to him. That first evening alone in the restaurant was filled with awkwardness. Oliver dimmed the lights, leaving only a few candles on the table, and we sat across from each other. There was a tension in the air, something we both felt, but neither of us dared to break. "Do you like Italian food?" Oliver asked, trying to ease the mood. "I love it," I replied, smiling, feeling his eyes trace the lines of my face. He brought out a plate of pasta, and we began to eat. The food tasted good, but I hardly noticed the flavor. My thoughts were consumed with him, his presence, his nearness. The conversation flowed effortlessly, as though we'd known each other our entire lives. We talked about travel, books, music. Oliver shared stories from his childhood, and I spoke of dreams that felt long forgotten. Each evening at the restaurant became a little escape from reality. We would stay for an hour, sometimes two, and each time saying goodbye grew harder. I could feel a flame igniting inside me, one that couldn't be extinguished. I never thought I'd meet someone who understands me so well, Oliver said one evening as we sat at the table, finishing our wine. You're special, Rachel. My heart started beating faster. Thank you, I whispered, unsure of what else to say. I feel the same. Those words felt like an acknowledgement of something that had long been in the air. I knew it was dangerous, that I was playing with fire, but I couldn't stop. With each new dinner, I became more immersed in this secret reality. Sam began to notice that I wasn't home as often. One evening, when I came back, he met me at the door, a question in his eyes. Rachel, where were you? He asked, his tone a bit tense. With a friend, I replied, trying not to give myself away. I just needed a change of scenery. He nodded, but there was a shadow of doubt in his gaze. I knew Sam was starting to suspect something, but I couldn't stop. These meetings with Oliver seemed to give me what I had been missing for so long: understanding, attention, the feeling that I was alive. Each night, when I returned home, I would ask myself what I was doing. Why was I risking everything I had? Why was I behaving so recklessly? But no answers came. I couldn't simply break the connection. I couldn't stop thinking about him. One night, after another candlelit dinner, Oliver asked, Rachel, what are we doing? I looked at him, searching for an answer. But instead, I said, I don't know, Oliver. I really don't know. You understand this could end badly, right? He continued. Yes, I replied. But I don't want to think about how it might end. I just want to live in this moment. He nodded, his face serious. I do too, he finally said. But we need to be careful. I knew he was right, but part of me already couldn't go back. Each meeting felt like playing with fire, and the more we continued, the higher the stakes became. Sam kept asking questions, but I brushed off his suspicions, coming up with new excuses for my absences. Oliver and I found refuge in his restaurant, in those quiet evenings when the world stayed outside, beyond the walls. These meetings had become more than just candlelit dinners. They were a place where we could be ourselves, without pretense, without the need to play roles. Are you happy? Oliver asked me one evening, looking directly into my eyes. I hesitated. Was I happy? I felt confused, torn between duty and what I truly wanted. I don't know, I answered honestly, but I know one thing. When I'm with you, I feel alive. And it was true. With each passing day, our meetings became more intense, more significant, but I knew it couldn't last forever. Sooner or later, the truth would come out, and I couldn't predict what the next step would be. The next morning, I woke up earlier than usual. Sam, as always, was rushing off to work. He was caught up in his tasks, thinking about his meetings and plans. I was standing in the kitchen, making coffee, while he said his goodbyes in a hurry, leaving just a light kiss on my forehead. I'll be back late tonight. He threw over his shoulder as he walked out the door. I hope you'll have good news by dinner. Of course, I replied, trying to smile. When Sam left, I felt strange, like I had suddenly been left alone in a big, empty house. The feeling of loneliness was almost tangible, and I didn't know what to do with it. Eventually, I decided to take a hot shower, hoping it would help me relax and sort through my thoughts. The water flowed pleasantly over my shoulders, creating an illusion of calm, when I suddenly heard a faint knock downstairs. My heart skipped a beat. Who could possibly be here at this early hour? I thought maybe it was just a random noise, but when I turned toward the door, I saw it slowly opening, and Oliver stood in the doorway. Oliver? I breathed, feeling my pulse quicken. What are you doing here? I saw Sam leave, he said quietly, closing the bathroom door behind him. I couldn't resist the opportunity. "You've lost your mind," I whispered, but there was no anger or reproach in my voice, only surprise and excitement. Oliver didn't answer. He stepped closer, his gaze intent and full of determination. I felt my breathing quicken. A fire ignited within me, one I couldn't control. "Sorry if I scared you," he said, but there was no regret in his voice. "You," I began, but couldn't finish. I felt his hand on my cheek, his touch warm and gentle. For a moment, I froze, but then, as if giving in to some inner impulse, I took his hand and pulled him closer. "Do you want to join me?" I whispered, not believing my own words. His eyes widened in surprise, but he didn't back away. Instead, he cautiously stepped into the shower, and I felt his hand brush my shoulder. Oliver moved closer, and I felt his breath on my skin. I leaned into him, feeling a tremor inside me. We stood so close that I could feel his heartbeat in sync with mine. The water still ran over our bodies, its sound filling the silence. But at that moment, I could hear nothing but our breathing. "Rachel," he whispered, as if he couldn't believe this was happening. "Are you sure?" I nodded, though deep inside, a small voice still held doubt. But that voice was drowned out by the storm of emotions I couldn't ignore. We spent the morning together, losing track of time. The outside world ceased to exist, and I felt like I had finally found what I had been searching for so long. Yet something deep within me whispered that this was only the beginning. Several weeks had passed since that morning when Oliver appeared in my bathroom, and since then, everything seemed to change faster than I could comprehend. Every encounter with him was filled with passion and secrecy, making me feel as if I were living in some sort of enchanting dream from which I didn't want to wake up. Yet, with it, came a growing sense of unease that I tried hard to ignore. Sam remained as busy with work as ever. He left early in the morning and returned late at night, often not even noticing the changes unfolding in our life. But one evening, something went wrong. It was an ordinary evening. I was getting ready to meet Oliver at his restaurant. We had agreed to meet after the place closed, once all the customers were gone. I put on a simple black dress and a little makeup, nothing too flashy, so as not to raise suspicion. Sam was home, but he was completely absorbed in his work, and I tried not to draw attention to myself. "Are you going out again?" he asked, not even looking up from his documents. "Yes, I'm meeting a friend," I lied, feeling a slight twinge of guilt at my deceit. "Don't wait up for me. I might be late." Sam just nodded, lost in his thoughts, and I slipped out the door. My car was in the garage, but I decided to walk. It wasn't far, and I wanted time to clear my head, to steady my thoughts. When I arrived at the restaurant, it was almost empty. The lights were dim, and I could see Oliver finishing his shift, clearing the last dishes from the tables. I entered quietly, and he immediately smiled at me, his eyes lighting up as soon as he saw me. "Hi," I said, feeling a little nervous. "Hi," he replied, coming closer. "I'm glad you came." We sat down at a table in the corner, where a single candle flickered, creating a cozy atmosphere. Oliver poured some wine, and we started talking. I enjoyed his presence, his attention, and it seemed like the world outside us simply ceased to exist. But at that moment, for reasons I couldn't explain, I suddenly felt like someone was watching me. It was a strange sensation, as if I were being observed from a distance. I turned around, but there was no one outside the restaurant windows except for the darkness. I tried to shake off the feeling, but it wouldn't go away. We continued our evening, laughing and talking about everything under the sun, but something still nagged at me. Perhaps it was my conscience, or maybe just a sense of foreboding. Meanwhile, Sam decided to come home earlier than he had planned. He had a strange feeling that something was off. It was an odd premonition that made him change his usual route and drive toward the center of town. He had seen me leave earlier, and for the first time, he felt genuinely uneasy about my absence. As he drove past Oliver's restaurant, he noticed my figure. I was standing by the window, laughing and chatting with Oliver, and in that moment, something clicked inside him. It was more than just a friendly meeting. He realized that right away. My posture, our shared laughter, the closeness between us, it all spoke for itself. Sam parked his car nearby and decided to wait. He watched us through the windows, his thoughts racing, and it felt to him like he was witnessing something he was never supposed to see. He noticed my fingers lightly brushing Oliver's hand, and that's when the anger and confusion began to boil inside him. Why was I here? Why so late? And why did I look so happy with this man? What is she doing with him? Sam muttered under his breath, gripping the steering wheel so tightly that his knuckles turned white. He knew he needed to act, but didn't know how. A conversation? A confrontation? Or should he just leave and pretend he hadn't seen anything? He sat in the car for a few more minutes, watching us, his thoughts swinging between doubt and suspicion. He decided he wouldn't make a scene. He wanted to know the truth. If something was really going on, he wanted to be certain. When I left the restaurant a little while later, I didn't even notice his car parked in the shadows. Sam sat quietly, watching as I walked home. He saw the small smile on my face, as if I were happy, and it stung him even more. Sam realized that this night had marked the beginning of something dangerous. He didn't know exactly what was happening, but he was determined to find out everything. I felt that my relationship with Oliver had become much more serious than I had ever imagined. What had started as innocent dinners and conversations had taken on a new dimension, one of secrecy, passion, and internal conflict. We both understood that we could no longer just walk away as if nothing had happened. Yet, staying in this suspended state had also become impossible. One evening, as we sat in his restaurant, Oliver suggested we spend the weekend together. "We need time to figure out what we really want," he said with a slight smile, "away from everything that surrounds us." I pondered for a moment. It was an offer that promised freedom from everything that had been weighing on me lately, from home, responsibilities, even guilt. At the same time, I knew it was a step into the unknown that could change everything. "Where exactly do you suggest we spend the weekend?" I asked, not hiding my uncertainty. "I have a country house, a small secluded place, away from people," he replied. "We can spend a few days there, just being together and figuring out what comes next." I felt two conflicting emotions battling within me, a desire to escape and a fear of the consequences. But, in the end, I nodded. "All right, I agree." We planned to leave on Friday evening, after Oliver's workday was over. I prepared in advance, packed a few things, and was ready to spend the weekend in what seemed like an adventure. I didn't know what these 2 days would bring, but I was sure they would be pivotal in my life. Meanwhile, Sam continued to keep an eye on me. He didn't know exactly what was happening, but his suspicions grew with each passing day. He noticed how I was leaving the house more frequently, how I was absent for long stretches of time in the evenings. He sensed that something had changed between us, but couldn't yet pinpoint what. When I told him I was leaving for the weekend, he suddenly changed his plans. "Are you sure this is a good idea?" he asked, trying to hide his concern. "Do you really need to go?" "Yes, I need a break," I replied, avoiding his gaze. "It's just a few days, and I'll be back." "Well, if that's the case," Sam smiled, but I saw something inscrutable in his eyes. "I'll be going on a business trip as well. It will be a chance to focus on the project." I nodded, not thinking much of it. It seemed like everything was going according to plan. But at that moment, I didn't know that Sam had already decided to follow me to find out what was really happening. That evening, Oliver and I set off for his country house. The drive was peaceful, and I felt my anxiety gradually easing. It was like a journey to another realm, far from everything I knew. Oliver held my hand throughout the trip, and I felt the tension building between us, but it was not anxious, rather a pleasant anticipation of something unknown. Are you sure you want this? He asked softly, when we finally arrived at the house. I need to understand, I replied, looking into his eyes. And this is the only way. We entered the house. It was cozy and spacious, with large windows that offered a view of the forest. Oliver lit a fire in the fireplace, and the room was filled with a warm glow. I felt the air around us thickening with tension. Do you really want everything to be like this? He asked again, and there was uncertainty in his voice. Yes, I said, although my heart was pounding. I want this. We began dinner, which Oliver had prepared. Everything was surprisingly simple, but incredibly delicious. I savored every moment, but felt a shadow of doubt lingering deep within. Sam watched us from afar. He couldn't believe he had gone through with it, but his suspicions left him no choice. He saw me leave with Oliver and realized that this was not just a friendly gesture. He followed us at a safe distance, trying not to reveal his presence. When he saw us stop at the country house, he parked nearby and stayed to observe. It was important for him to uncover the truth, to understand what was really happening. Sam was not prepared for what he would see next. He watched us enter the house, saw the light in the windows dim, and saw me laughing as I touched Oliver's hand. He felt anger and despair rising in his chest. Sam was bewildered. He didn't know what to do next, but one thing was clear. He couldn't just walk away. He needed to understand everything, even if it meant seeing things he didn't want to see. Sitting in the darkness of his car, he waited, hoping that the truth would reveal itself. That evening at the country house began like something magical, full of promises and unexplored possibilities. Shadows danced on the walls from the fire, and the warm light of the fireplace reflected in Oliver's eyes as he looked at me. I felt free, as if everything beyond these walls no longer mattered. Here, it was just us, and this moment that belonged solely to us. We sat together on the floor, wrapped in blankets, sipping hot tea. Glances, touches, soft words, all of it created an atmosphere where it was easy to lose oneself. Oliver slowly leaned in, and I felt his breath on my skin as he whispered, "You know, it's not easy for me either." I nodded, feeling his words pierce through me. Everything about this moment felt right, and yet dangerous. I knew I was on the edge, but couldn't bring myself to stop. "Oliver," I began, "I'm not sure what we're doing, but I know one thing. I don't want to end this." He smiled, his eyes lighting up. "And I don't want you to end it," he said, moving closer. But as soon as our lips met, a loud, insistent knock at the door interrupted us. I froze, my heart pounding wildly. Who could it be at this time and in this place? Oliver pulled back, and I shrank, feeling a wave of fear and anxiety wash over my face. The knocking came again, and this time a cold, firm voice sounded from behind the door. "Open up!" "I know you're there." I recognized the voice immediately. It was Sam. My husband was standing at the door, and I didn't know how to react. All my fears had suddenly become reality. Oliver looked at me questioningly, and I stood up, unsure of what to do. I approached the door, took a deep breath, and opened it. There stood Sam, his eyes burning with anger and hurt. He looked so foreign and yet so familiar. "What's going on here?" he demanded, his voice tense and filled with pain. "Sam!" I started, but he cut me off sharply. "No, Rachel. I want to know what's going on. You're here with him. Why?" I remained silent, not knowing how to explain everything that had been happening in my heart over the past weeks. How could I explain that this connection with Oliver had become something more than just an infatuation? "I deserve the truth," he added, his voice trembling. "Speak." I felt like everything inside me was falling apart. Not knowing how to find the words, I finally said, "Sam, I feel something for Oliver. Something I haven't felt for you in a long time. It wasn't planned, but it happened, and I can't ignore it." Sam stepped back, as if my words were a blow. I saw his face pale, and his eyes darken with anger and pain. Feel something? He repeated, as if he couldn't believe it. Seriously? After everything we had? I don't know how to explain it, I whispered, feeling tears welling up in my eyes. It just happened. Just happened? He laughed, but there was no joy in it. You're saying you just decided to betray me? Just like that? Because you got bored? I knew I couldn't justify my actions. Yes, it was a betrayal, but I couldn't deny my feelings. They were real, and I couldn't ignore them. Sam, I'm sorry, I said, feeling my heart squeeze with pain. I didn't want things to turn out this way, but I can't lie to myself or to you anymore. He stood silently, his breathing heavy and uneven. Then he took a step back, as if preparing to leave. You know, Rachel, he said finally, I thought I knew you, but now I realize I was wrong. You've become a stranger to me. Sam turned and headed towards his car. I wanted to stop him, but didn't know what to say. I felt a cold emptiness engulf me. I'm filing for divorce, he threw over his shoulder before getting into the car. I can't live with someone who has betrayed me. His words pierced through me like a blow. I stood on the porch, unable to believe what had happened. Oliver came up to me, his arms enveloping me, but I felt only emptiness and fear about the future. Everything will be all right, he whispered, but I was no longer sure of that. Sam's words continued to echo in my ears, and I knew that my life would never be the same. Several weeks had passed since that night, when everything I knew and loved turned to dust. Sam left, as he had promised, filing for divorce. He gave me no chance to explain, no opportunity to try to fix things. He just left, taking with him everything that was part of our life, leaving only a cold emptiness and a pile of belongings that now felt foreign. I knew I had forced him into this decision, but it didn't make it any easier. Oliver stayed by my side. He promised that we would get through this together, that now we had a chance to start over. But how? How could we begin anew when all bridges had been burned? We decided to move into his country house to spend some time away from everything that might remind us of the past. It was quiet here, peaceful, even somewhat soothing. The nature around us acted like a balm, slowly and gradually healing my wounds. Let's try to forget everything that happened, Oliver said, when we first entered the house after all our belongings had been moved. Let's start fresh. I looked at him, his face serious, and I saw how sincerely he wanted this. He wanted to start with a clean slate, free of lies and half-truths. I nodded, feeling a lingering fear about the future, but agreeing nonetheless. Let's give it a try, I answered softly. The first few days felt like a dream. We woke with the first rays of the sun, drank morning coffee on the veranda, and took walks in the woods. We laughed, cooked dinners together, and shared stories about our past. We tried not to talk about what had happened. Whenever a pause occurred, we filled it with something new, trying to create our own rituals, our own rules. You know, Oliver said one day as we walked along the lake, I think we can build something real. Do you think so? I asked, smiling. What if all of this is just an illusion? What if we're trying to run from reality? An illusion? He echoed, gazing thoughtfully at the water. Maybe, but sometimes it's the illusion that becomes reality if we believe in it enough. I wanted to believe his words, but doubts still clung to me. I knew that a relationship starting from lies and deception would always carry that mark. I tried to be honest with Oliver, not hiding my thoughts and feelings. We often talked about what troubled us, what scared us. Yet, the sense that we were building a house on sand never went away. One evening, as we sat by the fireplace, Oliver suddenly asked, Rachel, do you regret what happened? I paused for a moment. Do I regret it? I knew I had lost so much. My home, my family, my stability. But at the same time, I had gained something new. the chance to be myself, without pretense or playing roles. I don't regret meeting you, I answered honestly. But sometimes I feel that it could have turned out differently, without pain and destruction. Life is rarely as we wish it to be, Oliver remarked, but we can still try to make it better. His words made me think. Maybe, in truth, our life is just a series of attempts to make it better. We both wanted to start fresh, but is it possible to simply erase everything that was and forget the past? Days went by, and I felt we were growing closer. Oliver became someone who was always there, who understood me, who loved me for who I am. I tried to do the same for him, but at the same time, I realized that we both still carried our old wounds, our fears. One evening, I decided to ask the question that had been bothering me. Oliver, do you think we can make it? I asked, looking at him. Can two people who started everything with deception build something real? He smiled at me, his eyes warm and sincere. I don't know, he admitted, but I'm willing to try. I believe in us, Rachel. I believe we can leave the past behind. His words comforted me. We were at the very beginning of the journey, and I didn't know where it would lead us. But I knew one thing. I no longer wanted to live in lies and deception. I wanted to be honest and open, both with him and with myself. We decided to rebuild our lives from scratch. Each day was a step forward, towards something new. We were still learning to trust each other, learning to be sincere. I realized that happiness doesn't come instantly. It takes time and effort. But I believed that this path was worth it. Now, when I wake up in the morning and see Oliver next to me, I understand that we have a chance to build a new life, free from lies and pain. And maybe this time, everything will be different.